Bar, Greater RVA's premier law talk radio show. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
Good morning and welcome to Raising the Bar, the Law Talk radio show. This is Colleen Quinn. I am your host for this morning's show. We will have the show every Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, talking about different areas of the law, bringing in different experts in the law. And with me today is Dr. Mason Sheehan. Dr. Mason Sheehan runs a business called FITT, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that means in a minute. But let me tell you a little bit more about me and my law firm. My law firm is Locke & Quinn. We're located in Willow Lawn, and we are right next to the Chipotle. So I tell folks that you can come get all your legal needs as well as your big beefy burrito and your guacamole all at once. And now, since Dr. Sheehan's office is close to me, you can come get your healthcare needs as well, right all in one convenient location. So at Locke & Quinn, we are personal injury and family law attorneys, and one of the things that we often have the need for is to refer our clients to good healthcare providers that can help them if they've been injured to have a faster recovery. And vice versa, sometimes healthcare providers refer their patients over to us as attorneys to help them get a better recovery or a good outcome if they have a lawsuit. So Dr. Sheehan, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Really happy to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit, what does FITT, F-I-T-T mean?
FITT stands for Functional Integrated Therapy and Training.
And what is that? What is that?
We combine functional movement exercises with spinal manipulation to help our patients the best they can.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your background in education.
I have a Bachelor of Science in Biology and a Doctor of Chiropractic.
Okay. And Dr. Sheehan, how long have you been in this field?
I've been practicing for 15 years now.
Wow, good job. So let's talk a little bit about your opinion on chiropractic maintenance treatment versus somebody coming in to be treated for an injury.
Chiropractic maintenance is more like a lifestyle change, but when they have an injury, it's a little bit of a different treatment plan.
Okay.
If someone was in a car accident, I generally do not do maintenance after we kind of fix the injury. I would suggest further checkups, but I would not add that to their treatment plan.
So basically, is the thought there that once you've done a couple of manipulations, if you're out of alignment, you're pretty much going to be back in alignment, so there's no need to keep coming frequently for a lot more spinal manipulations? Or is it that that your treatment is more along the lines of kind of focusing on getting the person more fit as opposed to the spinal manipulation? Or just talk a little bit more about exactly what you do.
We try to teach the patient how to treat themselves with home exercise programs. It's not going to say they're never going to need a manipulation for the rest of their life, but seeing me, every 3 weeks for the rest of your life is something I'm not going to recommend in my office. It is a different lifestyle. Some people choose to do that, and it's just kind of a different business model for certain chiropractors.
So you're not really one of the chiropractors that believes in doing a long-term maintenance program?
No, we usually set goals. And when they're feeling better, we release them, and we just put them on per required need after that. If they need us, give us a call. We'll be there for them.
Gotcha. So I was looking online last night, and I was amazed at the number of really bad chiropractor jokes. There are about as many bad chiropractor jokes as there are lawyer jokes. But I did see one coffee mug which said chiropractors could be a little manipulative on it. So
that is
true. Well, tell us a little bit about how physical therapy or that concept fits into what you do. Because I know you don't call yourself a physical therapist, but you do a lot of things in terms of rehabbing the body, which are similar. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, in my office, the plan is about 70%, rehabilitation or physical therapy. Manipulation is definitely important, but I generally don't manipulate the entire spine. Every time you come in, I'll watch you move. We'll put you in certain positions, watch you breathe, and when I see restrictions, then I'll usually manipulate or use some sort of soft tissue manipulation.
Okay.
So.
And we were talking a little bit earlier before we got on the show about your studying and becoming trained in DNS. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because there's so many new things out there that are really moving away from what we consider traditional, cracking the spine type care.
Yeah, DNS, it's very interesting. It is based out of the Czech Republic. Dr. Pavel has really taken on Dr. Vojta's reflex locomotion, and it's a way of, it's almost like reverse chiropractic is the easiest way to think about it. It is reprogramming the central nervous system to remember how to move, because all our movements are pre-programmed in our central nervous system, but an injury or long time sitting at school, we kind of forget how to move. So DNS can really turn on like what we call inhibited muscles. They're not atrophied, but they're just not working the way they used to. So we put you in certain positions and we turn on these muscles so they can function properly.
And so this is kind of a new mindset in terms of how you approach healing.
It is new, and pretty much every physical therapy or chiropractic plan is based on the book Craig Liebenson, and everything, like even they based all rehab plans on him, but he's responsible for bringing DNS to this country.
Okay, nice. And we also talked a little bit about XOS or
no, it's called Exos.
Okay.
It's definitely, it's a way to teach kids how to run. I was watching my kids' soccer team, and they're great skills. They're really fast off the mark. They don't. Exos really teaches kids how to accelerate faster and absolute speed. Absolute speed is about after 12 yards. That's how fast they can actually go. So there's certain exercises you can teach kids to actually go faster at that. And also turning multi-directional speeds in sports is very important. If you can't turn fast enough, you're not going to be able to run against your opponent.
So this is really teaching the body how to move naturally the way we were intended to move before we ended up sitting at desks all day long.
Yes. The exercise program is usually about 70 minutes. It starts with a pillar prep, warm up. We do movement prep. In our office, we have 40 yards of turf, and we can actually watch kids and adults run and figure out and actually predict certain injuries that are going to happen.
Gotcha. So I'm in a car accident, let's say. And this lawyer named Colleen Quinn sends me over to your office because you're close by. Yeah. And I have back and neck pain. I'm also an aerobic instructor on the side, so I'm in relatively good shape. But I'm 54 years old. So, what type of treatment do you put me through, and what would my expected prognosis be?
Well, if you do a lot of aerobics, you're probably not going to stop working out.
You're right about that.
We do have that problem. So I try to educate them in the beginning. It's like if they could rest for about 2 weeks to let the inflammation process happen, that's your body's way of healing itself. If there's a sprain strain, there's going to be some sort of microscopic muscle tear, and your body's going to have to add new collagen fibers there. So if you can rest and not restart that inflammatory process over again, that would be our initial way to treat you. And of course, we do a case history. I'll get to know you and be like, oh, it's like to work out a lot. So we're going to ask her maybe just do the what is it, there's always in the classes there's always a modified version. I'm like use the modified version instead of trying to do the plank when you shouldn't be doing the plank.
Get down on your knees.
Use your knees
not your
and
toes.
do the modified version for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and basically you're not going to have the same endorphin level, and you'll be a little grumpy for those 2 weeks while you're letting your body
usually
rest.
Grumpy because there's no way to get away from the pain. But after about 3 to 4 weeks, you'll be able to move a certain way, and then it'll hurt, but when you go back to normal, the pain will kind of recede.
So walk me through what would the treatment be if I came in? And so you've told me that I need to rest for those 2 weeks. I've been a little grumpy because I'm not able to move as much. But now tell me what you do when I come in to get treatment.
There's usually there's always a case history because you got to get to know your patient. There could be pre-existing conditions. The first 2 weeks is mainly passive care, and then I usually do another re-exam because all the orthoneuro tests that I would do are going to hurt no matter what. So after about 2 weeks, you get more of a definitive diagnosis. You can actually find out what's actually going on with the patient. And 3 years ago, they actually changed all the diagnoses. You may have noticed this, and they're a lot more specific. It's not just cervical radiculitis anymore. They want to know what vertebrae is actually coming from. So after about 2 weeks, we can figure out what exactly the problem is.
So what are the tests that you do to determine what's going on?
There's cervical compression test. I would never do that in the beginning because the patient was just in an accident. You're just going to make things worse. But most of the time you ask, it's subjective. That's what the patient tells you. And then it's objective, what we see. And so it's more with an accident, you can, if the pain is shooting down the arm, that's more of what we do. If I push on their neck, it's always going to hurt. So
Right.
it's referred pain patterns tell us a lot.
Okay. And the passive treatment, what would that be?
In the beginning, it's just nice. You want to make them feel better. I usually recommend ice the first 3 days, but the jury's not in on that. I usually just go what feels better.
Right. We hear ice versus heat, and there's some controversy. And
there is. I mean, they're always doing new studies, which is good. But there's always going to be an exacerbation sometimes through treatment. So if we've got away from ice and then we've gone to heat and maybe they did aerobics too hard, they might want to try ice for a day or two.
Gotcha. And so after the passive care, I take it you move into more active care.
Slowly move into active, and you add resistance and slowly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you using weights, bands, exertubes? What kind of things would I envision?
I have everything you can imagine, but it's so much fun. It's like you're a kid again. You get to buy all these cool toys and like, hey, look, they're fun. They help you feel better. But mostly we use bands. We eventually move into kettlebells if they can. Very light in the beginning, but we want to like put patients on a goal. Be like, hey, once you feel better, the exercise never ends. If you do aerobics a lot, you can see it gets harder and harder and harder, and functional movement pretty much never ends either. We can always get better.
Okay. So you're allowing the inflammation to die down first, and then you're basically working on re-strengthening and getting more flexibility.
Mostly strength and flexibility. You want to get to full range of motion. But the body's going to go through like a 6-month healing process. We see them for about 6 to 8 weeks, but then they really have to continue with their exercises.
So that the home exercises are really critical.
They're almost more important than the treatment I give. Yeah.
So you mentioned about that 6-month time frame. Does that vary depending on the person? For example, if it's an older person with arthritis or somebody that's had fibromyalgia?
That is always a problem. It all depends on our age. If there's pre-existing disc degeneration, they're going to have a little bit more trouble. Because the facet joints are closer together, and sometimes they can, if they get hit really hard in a car accident, the problem is it's mainly acceleration. It's not usually the blunt force trauma. It's just like they go from a certain speed to another speed. So the facets can kind of like scrape, and if there's not a lot of room in there, they can scrape a little bit more. The muscles are tighter, the ligaments are a little bit smaller.
Okay. So that recovery period can vary.
Yeah, it's usually a little bit slower the older we get. Like up until 50, it's usually good. But once they get 60, 70 years old, you got the treatment's a little bit slower and maybe a little bit longer.
So if I was coming to see you for that 6 to 8 week period, how frequently does somebody typically come to see you?
That varies. People don't like to miss work anymore, right. So, and in this day and age, people need a job. So in the beginning, I would like to see them 3 or 4 times the first week. And then I usually get them down to twice a week.
Okay.
But sometimes they can't make that. So we're there for them. I'm
right.
not going to sit there and yell at them like, you need to get in here. I'm like, I'm here for you. That's what I tell my patients. You get here when you can, and we'll do our best.
And that we find that I find that with my clients that sometimes adhering to the treatment plan can be difficult. And, basically if they can flex their hours or do anything to make sure that they stay steady with the treatment, it seems like that is pretty important. Yeah,
that's why we generally stay open late, so they don't have to miss work. Or we have rushes like 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then usually from like 5 to 7:30. And when people are getting off work, we're usually pretty busy. And it helps the patient because emotional issues during this time is you got to work on those too. You don't want to be stressing a patient out and say you need to stick to your treatment plan. They got 4 kids, they're just trying to make it to. They're dealing with traffic to get to you. They may walk in and be like, okay, we're not going to do exercise today. How about just some massage and heat? And then you can go home and cook dinner for your kids or see your kids.
Well, that's nice that you have those late night, those later hours for folks. I think I might come over to your office just for the massage and heat, just for the heck of it.
Massage feels good. People love massage. That's why I have massage therapists that work for me.
Sounds like I could use that some days after a day of depositions or court. So let's talk a little bit about how billing works, because nowadays, I have clients that will come in that they don't have health insurance, and I have to figure out who can they be treated by? How can they heal? And see somebody that's willing to work with them and maybe take a lien on the case, on the auto accident case, or if it's a premises liability case in that regard. So talk a little bit about how payments work, especially if somebody doesn't have health insurance.
A lot of times if someone doesn't have health insurance and they go to a different doctor's office, there's going to be a huge bill because they don't have negotiated rates with certain insurance companies, and all of a sudden they're getting paid their full rate. Instead of making $100 a visit, they're billing out $300 a visit. I try not to do that, and especially like if you try to make attorney relationships, you can't give them $9,000 bills over and over and over and over. You generally just keep it, around a certain level that's not going to stress the patient out, mess up their settlement. I try to work like that because you got to think about the patient too. You can't just be all greedy and like, oh yeah, I have a personal injury case, I can run this huge bill. I would definitely I'd like to keep them down.
But you are one of those healthcare providers that is willing to work with someone that doesn't have health insurance and go ahead and take a lien on the case.
Oh, always. I'm willing to just make it work out for everybody.
Yeah.
It works out nice, and you don't want to. It's just just try to help out the patient, and I mean, if I have a certain bill, their treatment went a little bit longer, I might have to take a payment cut,
Right.
And at the end of the day, they felt better, they refer, and it works out better that way.
Well, I can tell you from the attorney side, working with a lot of injured clients, they're in pain. They're oftentimes having to miss work. So their financials are strapped. And if they don't have health insurance, then those bills just add so much more stress to what they're already undergoing, And when they know that they're working hand in glove with a good healthcare provider and an attorney, so that they know that eventually their treatment costs are going to come out of, whatever the settlement or the results are in the case, it just gives them such a sense of relief, which I can't help but think must help some with them being able to heal and focus on healing.
I usually spend about 2 or 3 visits explaining that to the patient because they do get nervous, especially if they don't have health insurance. And, in this day and age, not everybody's making a lot of money. And they're like, what is my bill going to be? And I'm like, I always tell them, don't worry, we'll figure this out at the end. I'm not going to ruin an attorney relationship, and not take a cut on your bill. I just think it works out better that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, a lot of folks don't realize that chiropractors can go to court and talk about treatment, and medical doctors are able to do that, but we also have a special section in our Virginia code that basically says that a chiropractor can serve as an expert witness. And I know that you've been an expert witness before in some cases, correct?
I've done it. I'll be honest, it's not the most fun thing to do in the world, but I'm getting better at it. It's a little nerve-wracking the first couple of times I did it because someone's asking you about your treatment, they go through every page and ask you the same question over and over and over, and then just kind of like waiting for you to mess up one little time.
Well, that's the defense attorney.
yeah, that's not you. But I generally don't mind it anymore. Yeah. But yes, in the state, we can testify as expert witnesses.
Well, I was an insurance defense attorney for the first 10 years out of 30 years of practice, so I knew I know it's like grilling the doctor. So and going through their report page by page and trying to find any little thing that you could poke at.
Yes.
So, but it is helpful when you can come and you can talk specifically to the judge exactly about what treatment you've rendered to the patient. And I find it's especially helpful when your bill is reasonable, because whether it's cases before a judge or jury, it presents so much better. We've had some cases where the chiropractic bill is extremely, extremely high. And, it becomes a little bit suspect in terms of the level of treatment that's been rendered. And I know your bills, from having worked with you, are extremely reasonable.
Yes, I try to keep them reasonable. I mean, I know a chiropractor who sends the same bill in every time he gets a personal injury patient.
It's like, cookie cutter.
Yeah.
So, one thing that is a little bit different is when we file in general district court, we are able to get an affidavit from you as opposed to you coming in person along with your report. And let's talk a little bit about that reporting, because I've seen reports that are really good that help the judge, and I've seen other reports that are not so helpful. So let's talk a little bit about that reporting process.
Notes are important. I don't do a lot of narratives, unless the attorney asks me for it. And if I do, I'll spend a little time doing it, and I'll send a little bit of a bill. But and the same as like testifying. If I go there, there's usually a charge for it.
Well, you should charge for your time. It's
I have to
valuable.
close my office. But definitely, like, notes are important. If I don't agree with doing the same thing every time. If you do something 5 or 6 times, it's not working, you should be changing up your treatment plan. And if you're doing that, it looks like you're a student, you're paying attention to your patient. You don't want to treat them 10 times and they're still a 9 out of 10 on the pain level scale. If that's not helping, change it up a little bit.
Right. Right. So going back to your shop, let's say, or your place of business, I'm almost envisioning kind of a romper room with the kettlebells and the bands, and I take it, do you have the large balls?
There's lots of balls all over the place. Kids are welcome in their office. They're always kicking them all over the place. But it's a lot of, it looks like a romper room, like toys. My kids love to come hang out there. They run up and down on the turf. They're jumping on the balls, around the tables, sitting around. We generally, like, I'll tell patients, you can bring your kid. It doesn't bother me, but it definitely looks like it's a playground.
I imagine some of the styrofoam rollers
foam rollers. Yeah. I like foam rolling. I don't like, I don't suggest mashing yourself to death on them. It's more like a warm up, but they do help.
Gotcha. It sounds like a real family friendly environment.
We try,
for folks to come to.
Yeah.
So, if somebody does come to you and they've been in an accident, and they don't have an attorney, typically, what do you talk to them about?
It depends on the severity of their injury. If they just go get an ER bill and I just think they need a couple of visits, and I say you may be able to do this on your own. It all depends on the adjuster they're dealing with. But if they tend to go see multiple doctors, orthopedics, chiropractor, physical therapist, they may want to consult an attorney because at the end of the day, the attorney can negotiate those bills for them at the end.
Yeah, the attorneys, oftentimes we're seeing a lot of folks who do have health insurance now have a lien by the health insurance company. So if it's Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever. So another thing besides negotiating some of the medical bills is also negotiating those liens with the insurance companies. And we also sometimes will have to negotiate liens with Medicare or Medicaid or with the workers' comp providers. And so it actually turns out that sometimes we're spending more time on lien negotiation than we are on proving the actual, who ran the red light type case.
Yes, I see that happen a lot.
Yeah. So we also typically, if somebody's referred to me, if they've only just had an emergency room visit and they haven't gone to see somebody like you for additional treatment, I will just honestly tell them, look, this is a case you can settle on your own. This is the approximate value of the case, and there's no point in having an attorney, take 1/3 of that.
Oh, that's nice.
Recovery. Yeah. Well, it's if it's a small recovery like that, it's really they can get that resolved on their own. But typically, if they've gone for treatment, such as with you, then the case is going to be a larger case that most insurance adjusters are not going to put the full value on unless there's an attorney there that's packaged it. And so when we come back from the break, let's talk a little bit more about how it works on my end when I'm going to claim package the case and how important it is that the records and bills and everything I get from you are easy to use. And we will be right back with Raising the Bar.
You've been listening to Raising the Bar, Greater Richmond's premier law talk radio show. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366. Now, back to Raising the Bar. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
And we are back to Raising the Bar, the Law Talk radio show. I am Colleen Quinn, your host. I'm an attorney at Locke & Quinn. We are located near Willow Lawn conveniently located next to the Chipotle and now the Chick-fil-A that recently opened up as well. I am here today with Dr. Mason Sheehan, and Dr. Sheehan is a chiropractor who recently moved his office very close to me. So now you can also get your healthcare needs as well as your legal needs and many different food items all in the same Willow Lawn shopping area. Before the break, Dr. Sheehan and I were talking a little bit about liens, and the station manager here indicated that not everybody understands what a lien is. So I'm going to go into a little bit more discussion on that. And Dr. Sheehan, you yourself were in an accident recently and got a big fat bill. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and that'll help us kind of describe liens a little more.
I signed I thought I was signing a consent form, and it turned out to be a lien. But that just means when the third party pays they'll pay the provider directly, instead of like mailing the check to the patient, which sometimes never makes it to the doctor. So that makes sure that the provider will get their bill paid.
Yeah. So basically, if I come to you for care, I've been in an auto accident, and I just need you to help me recover from my neck and back pain from the accident, and I don't have any health insurance, then you're going to essentially take an assignment or a lien on my auto case in order for you to get paid for the treatment, right?
Yes, I would make you sign a lien.
Okay.
Maybe not you, but
well not me. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to send you some chocolates or something later. I'm going to definitely come over to your office and take you up on the massage sometime. The massage in the heat. That sounds really good. And your romper room play area. So in that situation, and I know from working with you that your medical bills are nice and reasonable, and it's easy for me to be able to get full recovery on the bills that you submit. So if I come to you though and I have health insurance, then you would typically, there is some health insurance that you take, or is...
Yeah, I do take some.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say I come to you and it is one of the health insurances that you take. Generally, you would then get paid by the health insurance, my health insurance, correct?
Yes, we would bill to your health insurance. They would pay us directly.
Okay. And then what we're seeing, though, on the attorney side where I am, is that now the health insurance is taking a lien on the auto case.
Yeah, that is new.
Yes.
But it is happening.
So in many of the auto cases that we have now, the first thing I do when somebody comes in is I take an inventory of all the possible liens that they might have. We had a gentleman recently, he did not have health insurance, and he had gone to a lot of different medical providers. And so all of them had taken assignments on the case, but his initial hospital bill was over at MCV. And MCV works through the Department of Medical Assistance Services, and they take a lien as well. So I think we resolved his case for like $45,000, but about $35,000 of it was all liens for medical treatment. So we ended up spending most of the time just negotiating with about 10 different medical providers, including Department of Medical Assistance, which is basically represented by the Attorney General's office. So we spent all of that time just negotiating the liens down. And I think a lot of folks don't realize that the whole business of folks wanting to get repaid has become much larger over the past decade.
Yes.
So then there's another thing that I know you don't do, but some medical providers do, is that they will bill the insurance so that they'll get paid by the insurance, and then they'll do what's called balance billing, where they will try to bill the patient for the difference between what the health insurance paid and what their bill was. Which is generally a no-no, because if you agree with the insurance company, you're going to take their insurance money.
It's because they have a contract with that insurance company. They're supposed to take what they're paid.
Exactly. So we're finding that we're having to fight a lot of these balance billing fights as well. And proving the underlying who ran the red light case is becoming exceedingly easy compared to all the lien negotiations.
You may have some providers that provide things that the insurance companies don't cover. So say they have a laser, or they do spinal decompression, which their insurance companies that they're in network with don't cover, that may be sometimes when you're getting balance billed.
Yeah, and that is legitimate.
Yes.
So because you haven't gotten paid by the insurance for that particular service.
That's correct.
Right.
But some insurance companies are not even allowed to do that. You're not supposed to anyway.
Oh, you only can charge depending on the contract that you have with that particular insurance company. Well, most folks do, when they have an auto case or any type of injury case where somebody might be liable. It could be even an injury at a grocery store, or we've had cases where things have fallen off of upper shelves and fallen on people and caused neck and back injuries. But when those folks come in, I have to do a checklist of, is there a workers' compensation lien? Were you injured on the job? Is there a Medicare or Medicaid lien? Is there a health insurance lien through a health insurance company? Is there a TRICARE lien if they're medical? Is there an assignment from the medical provider? And so we kind of go through this checklist to figure out just how many liens are there going to be on the case, because sometimes I have to tell the client, we're not going to be able to get you much of a recovery after we have to pay back these various medical
You guys spend most of your time negotiating the bills with the doctors.
Right, right, which is no fun.
I know. It's bad enough trying to find out whose fault it is in this no-fault state.
I try to get my paralegal to do as much of the lien negotiations because she's a little nicer.
Yeah.
So also before the break, we were going to talk a little bit about claim packages, because what typically happens is somebody's in an accident and the first thing they have to do is get medical treatment. They need to heal. Mm-hmm. And we'll get the information from the police officer and the traffic accident report, and also get photographs of wherever the accident happens, some Google Earth images, etc. But we pretty much have to wait for them to stop seeing you, Dr. Sheehan, before I can submit what's called the claim package.
Yeah, I like to send my notes in the end. Some lawyers ask them, they want them constantly, but I like to send them in when I'm all done. When you're
all done with treatment. Well, the nicest thing is when I can read your notes.
Yeah. Sometimes you probably can't, but I try.
And then the really nice thing is when we get that nicely typewritten report, which basically kind of summarizes the notes, because then I don't have to worry about reading the notes.
Yeah, that does help.
But it's really nice when we do get a nice report like from your office, because that I can put in the claim package, and it just clearly explains what the treatment was, and that the patient got better. And it's always nice when your treatment works and you can show they got better, right? So typically we will then submit the bills that you provided and the report and your treatment notes along with the claim package and any other treatment. There might be an emergency room bill in addition in many cases. And then hopefully the case will resolve at that stage.
Yeah, sometimes I get a request for notes from a third party because they want to look at the notes too and decide what they're going to pay. Yeah.
Maybe they're checking to see was the lawyer honest and actually submitted
Usually
everything.
It happens at the end when it's almost about to settle. That's why it's always a good time.
Right, yeah. So basically when we get the case in, we kind of look and see what's the value of the case, and we can file in general district court if the case is under $25,000, if it's worth under that. And that's when you get off the hook, because I don't have to have you come in person to testify. I can just have you sign that affidavit.
Yes.
You probably appreciate that.
Yeah, I get the notes and I just sign, yep, I did those.
Right. However, if the case is worth more than $25,000, then that's when I have to file in circuit court. And that's when I give you the heads up, hey, Dr. Sheehan, I might need you to come testify in court.
Yeah, not my favorite day, but I'm happy to do it.
Yes. So, but it is very helpful when you have those fully nicely typewritten reports that can explain the treatment that was given. And since a lot of cases do settle at the claim package stage, or that same report can be used in general district court. So that's really critical, and I really enjoy working with you to have that sort of layout, as opposed to no report and just these really, really badly cryptic handwritten notes that nobody can read.
I find it helps when if you refer back to their medical doctor, and for them to actually refer for more treatment instead of just doing a long treatment plan. If they're constantly seeing their medical doctor and he's saying, okay, it's helping, let's just do, and let them tell you how many times you want to do it, that seems to help out a lot. Yeah.
So you work kind of closely with the primary care doctor.
Yeah, I try to get to know them, and I ask them who their primary care is. I'll usually send them like a heads up on what we're doing, and so they can see them. And then once they're done with their first treatment plan, they can go back. And if they need to come back, it helps for the medical doctor to send them back.
And usually I think they need that too, for health insurance reasons, because a lot of insurance companies limit the number of visits they can have.
Yes. If I like, sometimes they'll have 20 visits a year of like physical therapy, chiropractic. But if you send them back to their medical doctor and he suggests, 8 more visits, the insurance company's more likely to pay it.
Yes. Which is helpful. So how do you determine, let's say somebody's not getting better? Let's talk about those situations where you might identify there's something else going on.
There will be numbness, radiating pain, like severe pain, and pain's not getting better at all. Generally, even health insurance companies want their clients to do some sort of conservative care. So that's a prerequisite for an MRI. A lot of times you can't go to your medical doctor unless there's some severe weakness, like their hand's not working or they're having severe nerve weakness. Right. They'll send them out for an MRI right away. And I should send out too if there's like weakness there. But generally, if there's nothing like that going on, try some conservative care. If it's not working, I usually send them back to the primary care, and then they'll get them an MRI.
So things like tingling or down the arm, numbness, weakness, that might be indicators that there's nerve impingement or something more going on that's not going to.
Yeah. Long-term numbness, that happens during injuries a lot. That'll tend to go away. But weakness is something I keep my eye on because that means there's some serious nerve impingement.
Okay. Yeah. What about really sharp shooting pain, that type of thing? How do you assess that?
Well, you do certain tests to kind of figure out what's going on, what's causing it. We can put them through different motions, like a functional movement exam, because everything's not going to hurt. And when a patient usually says they're in constant pain, they're really not in constant pain. It's just they feel like they're in constant pain. Like if I can get you to move to the left, there's no pain, but you move to the right, there is pain. That's not constant. So like we'll just do our normal treatment and then see if that improves, and if it doesn't, we refer out as soon as possible. And
I suspect you deal with folks with all different levels of pain tolerance. Would that be a fair statement?
That is true. Usually the patient who claims to have a high pain tolerance doesn't have a high pain tolerance.
You automatically become suspect if you say,
like,
I have a high pain tolerance. Look, red flag.
Yeah.
Become a little bit suspect there. So how does that work? Typically, if you suspect there's something more going on, there might be a compressed disc or something, do you typically refer them back to the primary care doctor? Or are you able to refer them directly out to an MRI?
Yes.
What is your ability as a chiropractor in terms of referring for diagnostic testing or referring to like a orthopedic surgeon or something like that?
Okay. If they had Medicare or Medicaid, it would have to be the primary care, but I can generally refer out for an MRI. I like to send them to their primary care because it usually happens quicker, and I like them to do the paperwork instead of me, but I can if I need to. If they don't have a primary care, which has happened sometimes, we have a few MRI places and radiology places that will work on assignment, because an MRI is not, cheap.
It's not cheap at all.
But
no.
It'd be nice for them to wait for their settlement to end to get paid for it. So we work with a few of those.
That's nice too, to know that there are MRI places.
Yeah, they do exist. They're not hard. They're not easy to find, but they do exist.
And what about referring out to a specialist, like an orthopedic surgeon or a neurosurgeon or neurologist? Is that something that in your chiropractic position that you're able to do, or typically do you need to refer back to the primary care doctor? How does that work?
I can refer to the orthopedist. Generally, I like them to go to the primary care that works with the orthopedist already, so it's like it goes smoother, but I can refer to anybody.
Okay. So we talked a little bit before about the statute in Virginia that allows you to testify as an expert witness. And basically you can talk about the source of the injury. You can talk about your diagnosis, prognosis, the treatment plan, and whether there's any disability. So you pretty much can talk about all the aspects of the patient's injury, it sounds like.
Most of the spine. if I talk about an extremity, it has to be agreed upon before I testify in court.
Or else that defense attorney's gonna
they like that law right there.
They're gonna pull out that statute.
Yeah, they pull it out real quick.
They're gonna shove it down your throat, right?
So there better be a spinal injury too. If I just treat a shoulder, I don't know why you brought me to court. But if they agree upon it ahead of time, then I can talk about it.
Okay. And then when you come to court, do you use any sort of visual aids? Or
I always bring my notes and I look over them a lot the night before. But I sometimes I brought a spine. So, because you're talking to a jury, it's not really a judge who decides the whole answer. There's a jury of your peers. So I'll explain to them like where, if they had low back pain, I might point to the low back part of the spine. If they had neck pain, I'd point to that. I haven't brought it all the time. A couple of times I brought X-rays because it's good for them to actually see. Those are pretty much the only aids I've ever brought.
Gotcha. So we're going to take a quick break, and if anybody would like to call in and ask us any questions about getting medical treatment, especially chiropractic care or recovering from an accident, and call in to 804-454-1366. This is Raising the Bar, the Law Talk radio show, and we'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
You've been listening to Raising the Bar, Greater Richmond's premier law talk radio show. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366. Now, back to Raising the Bar. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
And we are back to Raising the Bar, the Law Talk radio show. I am your host, Attorney Colleen Quinn with the law firm of Locke & Quinn. And with me today is my guest, Dr. Mason Sheehan, who is a chiropractor who runs the company FITT, which is actually really close to my office near Willow Lawn. So we only have a few more minutes in the show, and if anybody would like to call in and ask any questions about getting health care after an accident or injury, call in at 804-454-1366. I'm going to go back to talking a little bit about this lien issue because it's a little bit perplexing, especially for folks that have been injured. And we're going to go back to the example of my client who we got a $45,000 recovery on his case. In his case, he actually was on a commercial premises and had a large commercial garage door for one of these storage units come suddenly falling down and whacked him on the back of his head and neck area, which I imagine would be something that you would treat, right, Dr. Sheehan?
I would try.
Yeah. But of course, the first thing he did was he went to the hospital, and then he went to see a lot of different medical providers, about 10 different medical providers, including a couple chiropractors as well. And so what happened was he had about $35,000 total in medical bills, but the most his case was worth was $45,000. So when we look at that, we're like, that's how do you slice up the pie? How do I get all the medical providers? How do I get Dr. Sheehan paid, and who's done a nice job on the treatment? And you probably were the last person he saw that you actually got him better, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
And so how do we divide up the pie? And normally what happens is we have to negotiate with each medical provider. And in that case, we had the MCV lien, so we had to negotiate with the Attorney General's office. And then pretty much the attorney ends up reducing their fee because I want to put money in my client's pocket. I don't want him to have gone through all of this for naught. So basically in that case, I think we were able to reduce the $35,000 in medical bills down to about $22,000. But we actually had to go to court on the MCV lien and get the judge to decide. And then of course it helps when the attorney reduces their fee and the judge sees, okay, the attorney's also reducing, the medical providers are all reducing, and that way we can put a fair amount in the client's pocket. But obviously that's a lot of work because of the liens. So that leads to another question, and something we were talking about is what do you tell patients when they come to you and they're using the hospital or the emergency room as almost their primary care physician.
Yeah, the hospital seems like it's free, but it's not. And so I recommend not go to the hospital unless you're dying. No more than twice. There's urgent cares. I mean, maybe just come out of pocket, for yourself. But a lot of patients definitely use the hospital as their primary care. And what they're doing is they're racking up bill after bill after bill because the hospital is charging you to save your life, even though your life is not in danger. Right. So it's good to go after the accident, and maybe if you have some severe weakness that comes out of nowhere, go to the hospital. But generally, I would suggest, not going there after the first visit or two.
And I totally agree with that. Having had clients come in that are using the hospital or the emergency room as their primary care provider, easily the bills that the hospital is issuing are 10 to 15 times what it would be if they had just gone to an urgent care provider instead. Yeah. And not only that, but the wait at some of the emergency rooms can be pretty lengthy as well. Yeah. Sometimes also going to maybe an ortho on call, like Advanced Orthopedic has the ortho on call also can be really helpful.
I send the ortho on call a lot. Yeah. Especially if they're like something happened, I'm like, you can get in today.
Right.
Or you can wait 6 months to see an orthopedic because they're busy. You go to ortho on call and Advanced Orthopedics, that's their satellite office, and you get right in.
Well, and it's nice because especially if you suspect you've got a broken bone, I mean, that's pretty important, right?
A lot of the urgent cares will have x-rays and stuff, and a lot of the bills just sometimes like $150, and you see someone, you're not dying, and you don't have a $4,000 bill for going to the hospital.
Right. So I broke my leg coaching my boys in soccer, and the first thing I did was go to an urgent care instead of an emergency room, and they were able to do the x-ray, and then of course after that I went to the ortho on call and followed that course, and my bills ended up being substantially less than had I gone to the emergency room. So you're right. Basically, use the hospital only if you're in dire. You're right. You think you're having a stroke or a heart attack or something pretty massively severe in that regard. So I was saying before how I discovered that there are just as many really bad chiropractor jokes as there are lawyer jokes out there. And as we start to wrap up the show, one of them that I found says, what kind of music do chiropractors listen to? This is really bad. It's really corny. Hip hop.
Hip hop. That's a good one. That's one of the better ones.
Yeah. So that leads to one of my kind of final questions. When I have gone for massage treatment or manipulative treatment or whatever, and I hear all of that cracking that's going on, is that supposed to be good? It's
usually pressure leaving. It's usually gas bubbles. It's really not your bones cracking or anything like that. It's very similar to cracking your knuckles. Like you crack your knuckles, they're not breaking, but the joints in our spine and our knees and our hips, they're just bigger. And so when they move out of alignment, the pressure in there builds up, and it's a bigger sound.
So say that again. What is actually happening? My bones aren't breaking, right?
It's more like gas bubbles, almost like opening up a soda bottle is what I tell my patients. There's a lot of pressure in that soda bottle. Like if your vertebrae slides over to the right, there's going to be pressure on that right side inside the IVF where the nerve comes out. So when it slides, the hole gets smaller, pressure increases. When you adjust, you hear that sound. You don't necessarily need that sound to get better, but it does help, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely sounds like something's going on. And one last question as we wrap up the show today. When somebody is out of alignment, does that really happen? Somebody's out of alignment, you can actually kind of get them back into alignment?
Each time we move the bone, it moves about the width of a hair. I find it's out of alignment because of dysfunction. Muscle and skeletal dysfunction. So if you can find out why they're out of alignment, I think it helps out a lot more. But the manipulation is key sometimes to actually, helping them move better because that bone can get stuck.
Gotcha. So if I'm feeling kind of out of sorts, I'll need to come by your office, get that massage, and kind of have you put me back in alignment as well. Plus, I can play with their balls and kettlebells and all your styrofoam stuff that's over there. So we have had a great time today with Dr. Mason Sheehan. Join us next week for Raising the Bar, the Law Talk Radio Show. Thank you.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Raising the Bar, Greater Richmond's premier Law Talk Radio Show. Call into the show with your stories and questions.
Where's the best news and talk? AM 820 WNTW Chester is the answer.